Russ Walsh. We're here in Mercy College the day after the Strand Rare Books Room event where all our authors came and you participated. So I would like to ask you some questions about your book, which got such a good response last night. So The Parent's Guide to Public Education in the 21st Century. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how the book originated?
Sure. Well, it was sort of a culmination of a lot of things I'd been working on throughout my career. First of all, a 45-year career in public education. And second, from my work on my blog, which originally started out focused on literacy, but then expanded to issues related to what's happening in the public schools today, standardized testing, teacher evaluation, corporate education reform. And another part of my work, which had been with parents through the International Literacy Association, where I was chair of the Parents and Literacy Special Interest Group for a number of years. And so all those things kind of came together, and I just thought that there was a need that actually you and I together discussed the need for a book that really addressed these issues as they relate to parents, because what they are hearing, much of it is mythology. What they're hearing is about how public education is going downhill, how we're threatened because of international competition. And I just wanted to get some truth out and also combine that with guidance to new parents who are looking for what's the best possible education for their kids.
It seemed to me from the start that this is not an academic book that you're writing as an educator or a researcher, which would be fine. Mm-hmm. But this is a book that comes as much from your heart, right, as from your research or from your experience of teaching.
Yeah, I think one of the pieces that's I didn't mention is that I'm a father and grandfather. So the father and grandfather part is really who wrote the book, because what I was doing is my image in my mind is my children who are right now having children of their own and making these kinds of decisions. So I wrote it for them, thinking that the issues and challenges that they face are similar to the issues and challenges of young parents are facing across the nation right now, and also that the country is facing as they make policy decisions that deeply affect public education. And the other part of the heart, of course, is that I am a product of public education. My entire schooling was public education. I went to all public schools. I went to a public state college. I've taught my 45 years in public schools. So that's where my heart lies. I believe in public education. I believe it's probably the number one greatest achievement of the United States is this, first of all, the concept of public education for all, and secondly, the execution of public education for all, which has been a really remarkable accomplishment, and I hate to see that besmirched by those who would wish to privatize education.
Do you think the greatest challenge for parents is at this time?
I think the greatest challenge for parents is parents of conscience for sure, is finding the just right school for their child, and at the same time supporting policies that continue to support the improvement of public education. So we can in the short term, and I certainly understand someone in the short term choosing to send their child to a charter school because it seems to be the best option in their locality at this time. And how do you balance that? I'm just having this conversation with my son right now. How do you balance that with knowing that these things like charter schools and vouchers and other school choice concepts work against public education in the long run. So balancing those two things. So in the book, I try to address things like what is a quality school, and trying to expand that notion of what is a quality school. And I talk extensively about Carol Burris and Kevin Wellner's group, Schools of Opportunity, which I think have the right concept of what a school should be and what a school of opportunity is, and one that's not focused on test scores, one that embraces diversity, one that recognizes the gifts that second language learners, for example, bring to a school. So I want to expand the notion of what is a good school, and also talk to parents about how to get a good teacher into the classroom and make sure that it's the best teacher for their child, because it's more than just teacher evaluations. It's more than just programs at colleges of education. It's your school district has to be working to attract the best and brightest. What are we doing to attract the best and brightest if our resources are going out the window for school choice schemes? We're not going to be attracting the best and brightest.
There is an implication, I think, that that parents need to be activists. They need to be very aware of what's happening within their school district, within the actual
Right.
school, and within the
Right.
classroom, which I suspect is very different from your experiences of going to school.
Yes. Well, I say in the book that my parents' idea of school choice was picking a place to live close to my father's work, and then sending me out the door to public school.
And mine too.
And there was no choice involved. That was what they did, and essentially trusted the school to do the job and to do it well. And I think the schools that I went to, and my brothers and sisters went to, certainly earned that trust, and I think my parents would have said the same thing. Now, I think if we're going to keep the public in public education, the public's got to be more engaged. The public's got to go to school meetings, school board meetings. The public's got to question how the school board is spending their money. They've got to question the overuse of standardized testing and how that high-stakes standardized testing narrows the curriculum and the choices that kids are getting. Usually not in the more affluent suburbs, but often in the less affluent urban areas where kids are being denied recess, music, art. And these are things that are vital to a broad public education, that were central to my public education 50 years ago and are central to every child's education, I think. So yes, a parent must be more engaged today, I think, and that's part of the genesis of the book, of course, is that asking parents to be informed, to be engaged, and if they're not informed and engaged, what might happen down the road.
There's clearly a big difference between the ways policymakers think about schools and educators think about schools, and parents too.
Right.
What advice would you give to policymakers? What is it that they need to do at this moment in time?
Listen to teachers would be a good idea. Teaching, and everything I've read coming out of education reform, the one thing, if I could narrow it down to one thing that's missing, it would be an understanding of what happens between child and teacher day after day in classroom after classroom all across the country. And, I spent the last 15 years of my life my work life as a school district administrator, walking into classrooms, observing teachers, watching them, observing children. That informs everything that I do, and my teaching career up to that point informed everything I did when I went into that classroom, and everything that I saw when I went into that classroom. It is a very, very different world than I hear the reformers talking about. It is a world where kids are nurtured and valued and cared for, where kids cry and fall and you're picked back up, and where kids receive the support that they need to the best of the professional's ability to take on literacy, for example, a world where that's truly a laboratory, where we're always experimenting, always trying to get better at what we're doing. And from my personal standpoint, looking at literacy and being in the literacy field for 40 years, the arc is not one of a pendulum that people always talk about. The arc is I'm constantly getting better and refining what we're doing, with some stumbles along the way. But the truth is that our teachers are much better prepared today, our public school teachers are much better prepared today to teach literacy than they were when I was in school. And it's telling every day as I walk into classrooms and see it.
If we stay on the trajectory we're on and policymakers continue to support the privatization of public schools, say that more children go to charters, we continue on this testing, with the testing regime that is in schools at this point in time, which is over-testing of children, and the same kind of curricular practices, the emphasis on technology, not in a creative way, but in a much more didactic way. Where do you think we'll end up?
I think we'll end up with a school system that mirrors the society. That is a dual school system. We'll have a school system for those who have and a school system for those who do not have. And I think underneath the corporate privatizers' agenda, and many of them may not see it, because I believe that many of them went into this with altruistic aims. The fact that they hold on to this now after they've learned what they've learned makes me question those altruistic aims. What I really believe is that you'll have a school system for the haves and have-nots, and the haves will get the finest education in the world, and the have-nots will be receiving an education that's training them to be Walmart greeters.
And where does that leave social learning and empathy and?
Well, I think eventually it leaves it in the dust, and it leaves us vulnerable. Can I say this? It leaves us vulnerable to totalitarian governing, because the entire reason for public education, going back to Thomas Jefferson in this country, is that we need an educated public to make a democracy work.
So listening and understanding between teacher and child
is that democracy, is where that happens. And from the way the teachers are talking to me now, that very thing is what's being pulled away. And the more mechanistic, the more assembly line approach we take to education, the less of that possibility. So literally, I believe a dual school system for the haves and the have-nots.
And the most important thing in your book, I think, is that social understanding of how learning takes place.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
That it takes, our understanding of what we read, our understanding of the world, our understanding of anything is a negotiated understanding that comes about through interaction between teacher and student, student and student, students, teachers and students all together, parents and their children. That's how we construct learning. Okay, that's how I understand the construction of meaning in reading, going back to Louise Rosenblatt, and that's how I understand the construction of meaning in all learning.
And
it's
a
social
democratic
activity
society.
in a democratic society.
Thank you.
Right?